Part two. So the first video, we talked about the fact that this video, first of all, is going to be diving into Eritrean history in specific, which means that it's going to be it's going to start out broad the way I'm starting it and narrow all the way down into Eritrean history. Number one. Number two, we talked about a nation state and how a nation state was created. To make a long story short, a nation state was created by the Peace of Westphalia. And the Peace of Westphalia was a peace treaty created amongst the Holy Roman Empire. And the Holy Roman Empire was the infrastructure created by the Moors, who were the junior partners of the Ottoman Empire. So the Peace of Westphalia was when normal natural Europeans, the white people in their own country, took over the infrastructure that Moors left. When they took over the infrastructure that Moors left, they all fought each other for vying for position to become emperor. And that left a devastating 30-year war that was devastating, left 50-60% of their population eradicated. From there, they decided, and the reason why they did the Peace of Westphalia first and foremost was two reasons. It's because, number one, you can't, number one, they needed to put everybody on equal footing so that there would be a peace. Just because you're a king and just because I'm just a city state with a governor or something like that doesn't mean you have the right to attack me later on, because you have divine right to rule. So they were able to strip away the power of divinity in their eyes, right? And so yeah, that was reason number one. I forgot the reason number two. I was just about to tell you. They took God out of government. Because they wanted to, all of them, the reason why the war started was because all of them wanted to be emperor. And all of them were claiming divine right to rule. So because they were all claiming divine right to rule and going to war with each other, that was one reason why you had to take God out of government in their eyes. And then the other reason was because we have states that are lesser than a divinity, than a kingship. And therefore, we need to protect those states. And therefore, you can't come here with your divine right to rule ideology. So this is the Peace of Westphalia. This is what created the nation state. This is why in the UN, technically, even though we know that it's not real, in the UN, technically, all states are the same. You know, Eritrea, Nigeria, Sweden, Brazil, whatever country it is, maybe your population is different, which is why you have different powers. Maybe your technology is different, but in general, we are on an even keel. So that was the nation state. Now, this nation state concept was the reason for the scramble for Africa. Yes, they robbed, yes, they raped, and yes, they pillaged. But that wasn't why the higher-ups were doing what they were doing. The higher-ups were selling that story to their subordinates, to their soldiers. Any Eritrean, if you look in Eritrean history, if you hear the Eritrean people, they will tell you directly, we were colonized by Italy, and then Britain came and defeated Italy for us. They will tell you that the British treated them far better than the Italians ever could. I mean, the British were polite. The British were, they would walk with you and hear you and talk to you and see what you knew and see what you would say and discover and try to understand what you were going through and ask you all these questions. And at the time, people were like, wow, the British are really great people. Not understanding that the British had just maybe, 50 years before, because they came in 1940 something, after World War II. The British had just deciphered the Rosetta Stone 50 years before. What is the Rosetta Stone? The Rosetta Stone is not on TV the way you know it. The Rosetta Stone is a big, huge stele, which is basically a big, huge stone block, a granite block, but heavy and big enough, bigger than a car, not even a regular car, like an SUV. It's like the size of an SUV. And this stele, which was placed in the town of Rosetta, which is not too far from Alexandria, which is on the coast of Egypt, a French soldier, because at the time Napoleon had just taken over Egypt, he had defeated, I guess, the Persians. And he took over Egypt. One of his soldiers was patrolling to Rosetta, found this stele. The stele, so huge, had 3 languages on it: Demotic, hieroglyphic, and Old Greek. Old Greek meaning Socrates, Plato Greek, not recent. So Napoleon found the stone. The British got wind that the French found the stone. When the French found, when that happened, Britain came in and stole the stone. They defeated Napoleon, took the stone for themselves, and brought it back to England. And they gave it to a man named Thomas Young. So the guy that was the French guy that was first deciphering it was named, it starts with a CH, I believe, his last name. I'm not sure. You got to look it up. The guy who's the French man who was deciphering the Rosetta Stone. He was allowed to stay on. The English, even though they were killing the French in Egypt, were actually said, "Don't worry, French. We have bigger fish to fry too. So while we kicking your ass over here, we'll still let you come and decipher the shit like our brothers." You know what I'm saying? So we can discover what's going on, right? So they do that. Thomas Young creates the very first quantum physics experiment ever. He proves that light is a wave and a particle. How did he do that? Because he deciphered the Rosetta Stone. How did he decipher the Rosetta Stone? Because the Rosetta Stone had 3 languages that all said the same thing. It was about a king, some king about 4,000 years before, or some shit like that, that was basically putting the stele there to say, "I'm king, you must listen to me, don't listen to him. I'm the blah, blah, blah. This is where you blah, blah, blah. You pay taxes here," whatever it was saying. But it was the same message in 3 languages. So they were able to decipher. They said, "Oh, when you have a bird, when the hieroglyph says a bird or a ocean wave or a blah, 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 it means this in Greek." And, you know, when we say this in Greek, then it means, and Demotic, the 3rd language that's on the hieroglyph, is the mother of Giz, by the way, which is the mother of all the languages of Ethiopia and Eritrea. So now, again, they were saying, oh, they were able to use the Old Greek, the Plato Greek, and were able to decipher the hieroglyphics. When they were able to decipher, this has happened in the 1790s. That was when they found it. Thomas Young did the first quantum experiment around 1815. So they deciphered the Rosetta Stone. They went back into the pyramids and broke down the pyramids, which happened to be the greatest science you've ever heard of in your life. All American ingenuity and British ingenuity has come directly from the pyramids and nothing more. And the British were nice to us Eritreans, because they wanted to know what we knew. They wanted to know if we knew. And obviously we did not know. We still do not know. But that's why they were nice to us. If Eritreans are listening, that's why they were nice to us. They weren't nice to us because they liked you. They were nice to us to see, do these motherfuckers know what they've done? Anyway, so Thomas Young did the first quantum physics experiment. And then what happens? The Industrial Revolution. Carnegie, steel production. Ford, all these people breaking down all the science. America leaps and bounds. Leaps and bounds. Technology explodes. This is where European power comes from. This is why they say aliens built the pyramids. If you notice, Ethiopians and Eritreans, what do they have? Big head and big eyes. They're the aliens. Now, in reality, they try to pick those out, what they seem like the Lion King is saying today, that the white lion, they call him Kiros, which is my last name. And Dad, I want to tell you, since you passed now, it was beautiful, because once they lied on your name, Hollywood started burning. I was like, yo, this shit is fantastic. Like y'all bum ass niggas. Like, look at y'all burning. Yeah, I loved it. So, but you are going to try to attach yourself to the history through me because you want to. It's okay. You want to say that you're me. Um, and all white people, Asian people, all people come from Africa uh, um, indirectly anyway, right? We know that. There's no way that you could be on the planet and not have come from Africa. But what they're not telling you is genetic modification, that there's a negative of all people outside of black people. So if you're in Africa, there's Asian tribes. I mean, there's African tribes that look straight Asian. I'll put a video up on it. I've already researched it and seen them. There are dark-skinned black people that you would think, if they weren't black, you would think they were straight Asian, and they live in Africa. I've seen it. Why does Manute Bol, or Bol, the new NBA player, his son, he looks nothing like a Nigerian. He looks nothing like a Ugandan. He looks nothing like a Kenyan. Kenyans even, they might have the same tone, but the South Sudanese are super tall. The South Sudanese have short noses, small noses. The South Sudanese have a smaller nose than me. If you look at their face, they don't have a big nose. They're super tall. And then the pygmies are there shorter. So the tallest people are only 50 or 100 miles away from the shortest people in the world. The pygmies, right? They're next door. So Africa had the greatest the greatest diversification of DNA because of melanin, right? Because of melanin, and specifically because of EU melanin, which is ironic because you would think that EU sounds European which is why the Europeans should stop this nonsense of complete flipping everything, because it's really revealing you, and there's no need for you to be upset. So the if you have pheomelanin, you have sulfur-based melanin. You cannot be alive on the planet and not have melanin. It's impossible. If you do not have melanin, you will not be alive. You will be a dead person. Melanin is the secret to every activation of your body. You don't think to breathe. You don't think for your liver to release nutrients. You don't think for your kidney to process liquids. You don't do all that. Your melanin does that. You have a melanin governor. When you're albino, let's say you're a black African and you're albino, you can be albino in your liver. You can be albino in your pancreas. You can be albino in your blah, blah, blah. It means that you do not have type 1 diabetes is albinoism of the pancreas. Your melanin governor is not working. It cannot regulate your pancreas, and therefore you must take a shot on cue when you eat or when you blah, blah, blah. Your melanin is not working. We also know that a melanated cell cannot be forcefully modified. That a melanated cell, in order to genetically modify a cell, to get to the DNA structure of a cell and modify it, you have to have ultraviolet light. Ultraviolet light is required to split the cell open. And we know that the melanated cell absorbs ultraviolet light. It cannot be split open. So what does that mean? That you have to split open an albino, which is what previous generations in Africa probably did. We had high science, we took an albino, and we made different peoples. We made different peoples. And some part of this is our karma coming back to wreak, that we would be enslaved by those that are genetically inferior, to prove that it's about spirituality, not your knowledge and not your blah, blah. It's the merger of power and love. You don't have the love of power. You have the power of love. So there's parts of our reign where we didn't have the power of love in our heart. And so we suffered. And our karmic debt is over now. And we're going to rise. But as we rise and do our thing, we can't forget what we must be, which is benevolent and fair, and understand that it's far deeper, and can't take things personal. Not too much. And this is not for me anyway. This is going to be for like 10 generations where my kids are, whatever. So anyway, the Rosetta Stone was found, deciphered by Thomas Young. He did the first quantum physics experiment. The Industrial Revolution went bananas. America and Britain. The sun doesn't set on the British Empire. This is how powerful it made them. The sun never set on the British Empire. Now, when the Industrial Revolution took place, there was a meeting in Berlin. I forgot if it was the Scramble for Africa. I forgot it was, yeah, the Berlin Conference. It was the Berlin Conference. This was the higher-ups of European society deciding that they were going to create what we term as the New World Order. The New World Order was the 3 C's: Christianity, commerce, and civilization. They were going to help civilize us. Now, what that means is that they sent not emissaries, but they sent agents into the interior to find out what was going on. Mind you, when you read these people's documents, I've read some of them, they are completely oblivious. You have to remember Alexandria and Rosetta, these are on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Literally, you have literally not probably been in 20 miles. Giza is what? Maybe 50 to 100 miles from the coast. You didn't go in anywhere. So all of this was who knows if it was strategically even put there for them to do that, to have the ego for them to wake us up later. I don't even know how great this shit looks. You got to study it. But when you read the people that they sent inside, they don't know what. Some of these people got malaria. They were writing letters. This is the 1800s. They're writing letters, sending them back like, oh, I found Lake Victoria, which was Lake whatever, but Victoria was what they changed it to after the Queen, because that's who was ruling at the time. Lake Victoria is the Queen of England that was ruling when they discovered it. So now you can go back in time and realize, oh, y'all just discovered it yesterday, because Lake Victoria also, and there's another letter that I'll put in about Menelik's son, who died in England, and Queen Victoria felt so bad. She wrote a bad letter, like, I can't believe he just died of depression, blah, blah, blah. He's talking about the son of the Ethiopian king, Menelik's son, died of depression in Britain. And she wrote about how sad she was about it. How he looked at it like, oh my God, they're just going to make me their puppet, blah, blah, blah. And he literally died of depression. So Queen Victoria is a huge figure in this also. And she has many, I think it wasn't her, it was Queen Elizabeth that was with Haile Selassie in Time magazine, who they were pumping on purpose. But anyway, that's another story. We go back to the guys that were infiltrating the African interior. They were trying to figure out what Africa was about, what was going on, blah, 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 blah. Now, they came to create nation states, not just rob, rape, and pillage. They wanted to create borders. So in the Berlin Conference, they had a deal, an honor amongst thieves deal. We are not going to step on each other's toes, number one. Number two, you are going to get signatures from local chieftains that acknowledge your border. You have to mind you, there's no internet, there's no telephone, there's no nothing. So they want you to identify the leaders. They want you to circumvent those leaders, and they want those leaders to sign off on incorporation documents to be sent back to Berlin, and a map of Africa would be created. Lines will be created, and these will be the nation states of the world, which is what Eritrea has been fighting Ethiopia for this whole time. Ethiopians keep saying that Italy stole Eritrea from Ethiopia. No. Ethiopia wasn't even created until Eritrea. Eritrea was created before Ethiopia. Oh, well, they had kings and queens and blah, 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 blah. We'll break all that down soon. Now, they come into the interior. They rob, rape, and pillage. They find tribes that are unified and strong and divide them. They would find, so if Shaka Zulu, the one nigga they'll give you, the one nigga, they always got to give you one nigga. The one nigga they'll give you is Shaka Zulu, right? They'll be like, Shaka was a beast, he did it, right? Okay, cool. So they'll take Shaka's tribe, they'll split it down the middle, and they say, you are this and you are that. That was the design method. The design method was that. And so they ended up making all these nation states. Eventually, they created an organization of African unity, which later on became the African Union. They couldn't come up with a union directly, but they came up with the African Union by just transforming the Organization of African Unity. At the Organization of African Unity is where it was decided that the European lines would stay. And from then on, it became the African Union, and they, embarrassingly enough, had the least resistance from the place in which they received the most power. It's a beautiful thing when you think about it. It's a beautiful thing. So now, Eritrea and Ethiopia. Giuseppe Sapetto came into Eritrea through the Afar brothers in 1860s. The reason why, and this is the reason why Eritrea was one of the last places to be colonized, Somalia, Eritrea, because they didn't have the Suez Canal. They had to build the Suez Canal for us to bring their ships in. They couldn't come around the coast. Otherwise, they would have to come around the whole African coast. So once they built the Suez Canal, they were able to split that and come right down the Red Sea and invade. This is why Eritrean genetics, culture, and all that stuff is the most preserved. Eritreans, Ethiopians, Somalians, we have all our culture is pretty much intact. If you look at my bloodline, I have my name is Eritrean. My father's name is Greek. My grandfather's name is Greek, and his father, my great grandfather's name is Eritrean. So it's Eritrean, Greek, Eritrean, right? So now Kairos is a modification of Kairos. Kairos is Kairos, and Kairos is a mythological god of Greece, which is, again, we're taking back what's ours anyway, but a mythological god of Greece who's naked, and he has a lock of hair, a big long piece of lock of hair in the front. Not on the side, not on the back. He has it in the front. Your crown chakra, right here. So he represents, and which is how I feel like me and my dad were, which was naked means that tell you everything straight up. Crown chakra means that we're about that higher consciousness and constantly moving and on the go, the traveler, the Kairos god is naked with a lock of hair, and he represents the golden opportunity, which is what my dad's name means, the golden opportunity. So my name is their struggle, and his name is the golden opportunity. So their struggle has a golden opportunity. So he has the lock in the front of his head because he represents opportunity. You have to grab it as it comes, or you'll never be able to get a hold of him again. So, so the modification of Kairos, which is in the Latin, is Kyros, the Italian version of the Latin. They're gonna, when you go on Google, they're gonna say the Ethiopian, blah blah. And it's true we've adopted it, but that's because of colonization. So Ethiopian itself is not an African word. Everybody knows what Kemet or Kem of Egypt was called. Kem, the black land, like chemistry or alchemy, the black sciences. So They used to say that we came from Ta-Natir, the divine land. Ta-Natir. What is the divine land in English or Latin or whatever you want to call it? It's utopia. And we all know that in mathematics, U, the symbol U, means micro or small. So utopia means heaven on earth, or a small heaven, a smaller version of heaven, right? Now, life is about motion. Life is about motion, and you stop life with emotion. Your girl break up with you, you're emotional. Your guy leaves you or cheats on you, you're emotional. You're stuck for a week. You're eating ice cream in the house for a week. You're emotional. You're stuck. You can't move. You're emotional. So if I say Ethiopia, what does that mean? That means not heaven on earth. That means hell on earth. And then in Ethiopians say, yeah, we know. Some Ethiopians say they know. And then they say, oh, we're not Ethiopian, we're really Abyssinian. Oh, well, what does Abyssinia mean? Abyssinia sounds like what? Like Pennsylvania, California, Georgia, Yugoslavia, IA at the end. Land of. Land of what? Land of what? The abyss? Abyssinia? So you're land of the great void? Land of the great nothing? This is disrespectful. These are disrespectful names. Ethiopia is a way for them to call you nigger. Abyssinia is a way for them to call you nigger. Period. Aliens built the pyramids is a way for them to call you nigger. Period. Even though, which makes me think now that the aliens from everybody's idea of shrooms might be that negative beings and not positive ones. If they're calling us aliens, they must know, right? They must know aliens are negative. So maybe when motherfuckers do shrooms and see aliens and shit, maybe that ain't a good thing. I don't know. I wouldn't know. But anywho, or maybe the opposite. Maybe it's good. We'll see. I'm gonna go to Egypt and find out. Right? But one of these videos gonna pop up. I'm in Cairo, getting all the history. Right, so Abyssinia and Ethiopia. So they wanted to create global order through the nation state, and now they want to create the unions. African Union, they already made. European Union, they already made. Trump is here to create the North American Union. This is why he keeps talking about Canada and Mexico nonstop. He doesn't want to make a wall with Mexico. He wants to build a bridge. He doesn't want to. He can openly say about Canada, but he can't openly say about Mexico. And this is why they want to take the cartels out and all that. They want human beings to flow freely between Canada, America, and Mexico. Same thing in South America. Same thing in Asia. They want to create an Asian Union. So these are the goals. Now, I wouldn't be too afraid, because even if you read their worst people, like Zbigniew Brzezinski, a man that speaks on hegemony nonstop. I mean, he just talks about running the world all day. So he even tells you, he says, Zbigniew says it, he says, listen, motherfucker, listen, motherfucker, just because you rule the world don't mean that all of a sudden you have complete control. You're not going to be able to. This shit is going to shake at a moment. Like, it's like building a skyscraper. You build tall enough, the wind it becomes huge factor. The wind might knock your building down, bruh. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with this shit. Oh, you trying to rule the whole world? You motherfuckers think the sun doesn't set on them? Okay. Babylon will fall. So now, Eritrea was created in 1890. We said before in the other video, Italy was created in 1870. Germany was created in 1868. Germany used to be called Prussia. If you remember, look it up. It used to be called Prussia, Russia. There was different states, they were, Europe reconformed themselves before they came out to see us, right? Like I said before, the person who sent Giuseppe Sisapeto was a king, King Umberto. There are no more kings in Italy, presidents and prime ministers only. The only kings left are, I think, Sweden, England, the Nordic. They don't really consider Italians purebloods, so they probably got rid of their kings. Well, it's true. If you ever watch that, I loved it. True Romance with Christian Slater and Dennis Hopper. If you see the Dennis Hopper and Christopher Walken scene where Dennis Hopper is like, Sicilians are spawned by niggas. That shit was, he tried to drive it into their soul. That shit was funny. Anyway, that was a good scene. They did so much effing to Sicilian women. Anyway, it was funny. So Eritrea was created in 1890. Ethiopia was created in 1896. For Ethiopians listening, you were created, and this is a fact, this is another fact. Ethiopia was created after Eritrea. Now, how do we know this? Or let's break something down here. In order to become a nation state, your contract or your corporate document, your incorporation documents had to be sent to Berlin and officially ratified. Now, they often say Ethiopia has never been colonized. And if you ask an Ethiopian, he'll tell you, yeah, us and somebody else. There's one other country. They'll tell you, they know. There's one other country, and that country is Liberia. How was Liberia created? Liberia was created by, I believe it was called the Montevideo Society. I forgot the society that was in America that decided that free blacks in America should be sent to Africa. They had an idea that these free blacks were going to continue freeing other black people in America, and therefore we should send the free ones to Africa, get them out of here, so they wouldn't influence the rest of the slaves. So they sell out Stephen Django black people, sent them to Liberia, to what we now know as Liberia. Back then it was whatever it was. They bought up land, created a constitution, and called it Liberia. And so now, when you look at African history in their documents, they say Liberia was never colonized. So they'll show all colonized countries in red, and they'll show all non-colonized countries in blue. And they'll show one little sliver on the west coast, which is Liberia, and then big old Ethiopia, not so big, but Ethiopia is big though. Big old Ethiopia, not colonized. But Ethiopia did exactly what Liberia did. There were a bunch of niggas that created a colony. There are a bunch of niggas that created a colony. You sold out, Menelik. You sold out, Johannes. You sold out. Tedros didn't sell out. I'll give you Tedros. Tedros stood tall. Tedros killed himself with honor. He wasn't going to let them take him. Tedros' scalp, they scalped Tedros. They scalped him and put him in the British Museum. Tedros killed Menelik's father. So Menelik's father was ruling. Anybody knows back then there was no Ethiopia or Eritrea. Everything was based off, a lot of it was religion. So 40% of Eritrea today is a tribe called Tigray, and Tigray people weren't part of what was the Aksum dynasty. They weren't part of Aksum. But Aksum, which is Ethiopian Tigray, I am part of it bloodline-wise as a Tigrinya person. So my tribe, Tigrinya, and their tribe, Tigray, we speak the exact same language. So exact same language. That you can even tell, you can barely hear the accent. But we're at war every day. And we're going to be at war every day because they keep selling out. And the war's not going to stop. We're going to keep shooting. Anyway, and they just took an L. And they just took an L because they won't stop. They think they're special. They're not special. And you're fighting a battle that's irrelevant. There's bigger fish to fry. You morons. You're trying to have the sanctity of the Ethiopian crown. There is no Ethiopia. But anyway, 1890, Ethiopia was created in 1896. So There's a document that I'm going to post on here where Menelik is. So Tedros killed Menelik's father and took over. Killed Menelik's father, took over, but he raised Menelik. Menelik left at 18 and came back. When he was running, Tedros used to send letters to the British. He used to send letters to Queen Victoria and asking them for their hand in marriage and shit like that. He didn't know that they hate that nigga, that they was gonna try to murk him and all that. So he didn't understand. And then he started to get a whiff of it when he was asking for certain things and they were sending disrespectful things, like kind of like I don't know, I can't even tell you, but like imagine like if you say a statement like they did this to in Eritrea, which was there was a guy in Eritrea. This is now like in the 2000s. They said the guy was like, but for now we have to keep crawling, basically saying like even if we have to dig our hands into the ground and go like this to move up and keep moving, we got to do that. He was saying that at a speech, and then the Americans that were at that speech sent him a box of nail clippers, like for intimidation and all that bullshit. So they were doing that also with Tedros. They were mocking him. So he locked up the Bamas they sent. They sent like 7 Bamas, locked them all up and said, come get them. Guess what the British did? They came and got him. I don't know if they got killed first. I don't know if Tedros killed him first, but Tedros killed himself. Tedros killed himself with the gun Queen Victoria gifted him, mind you. So the British received help from Johannes and Menelik. Menelik was mad that Tedros killed his father. So Menelik was, and I'll post his letters to Britain, where Menelik is saying, I will do what you want. Basically, I will get on my knees and do whatever you say, blah, blah, blah. In a nutshell, I'm being very general, but I will post it for you to read for yourself. And so they gave him provisions. They gave the British soldiers that were coming in food, water, guides, maps, all to hit Tedros. Tedros was building in Magdala, Mary Magdala. He created a city, Magdala. They burnt that shit all down, scalped him, put his scalp in the British Museum. Johannes, now Italy comes to Eritrea. The Eritreans come to Rasalula, which is the general in Tigray. Rasalula sells us out. Italy takes over Eritrea in a minute. Menelik signs, Tedros and all them, Menelik, I believe it was Menelik, signed the contract that acknowledged Eritrea in 1890, January 1, 1890. Menelik's signature is on the January 1, 1890 document, not just the 1896 document that you like to reference all the goddamn time. Do you understand me? You've been sold out, and you didn't sell out because you owned us and you gave us up. No. You sold out because the way that Europeans were creating corporations in America was that they needed local hands to acknowledge. They needed a local sellout, which was you. Menelik, Tedros, not Tedros. Tedros is an OG. Menelik, Johannes, y'all sweet. Y'all sweet. Straight up. Y'all Stephen and Django. Straight up. And Menelik's son died of depression because of it. Straight up. This is where Menelik's son died of depression because of it. He was like 19 or 20. And then later on, this is where Haile Selassie starts to come in with his mother. And mind you, the reason why Menelik's son was depressed was because he started to say that he was Arab. He wanted to join the Ottoman Empire in the great wars that were happening. He started saying he's Muslim, the son of Muhammad. This is all documented. It's all documented. You can look it up. So they said, oh, no. You're not going to, Ethiopia's not going to turn Muslim, because you have to remember the world was split upon. White people were elevated because of Jesus. There was a reason why there were pictures associated with the Bible. The Bible had no pictures in the Bible. How come there's no pictures in the Bible? You always bring a picture outside of it. Right? So the Arab world was running the world based on Islam, saying Arabs are the best. White people were running the world basically saying that white people were the best. Meanwhile, the black man lost everything that he knew of himself. every African on the interior. So, 1890 comes around. Italy gets Eritrea. Italy builds it up. Cities, all the vehicles, machinery, roads, blah, blah, blah. And then in the 1890s, they decided we want Ethiopia too. And so they start a war with Ethiopia too. They lose that war. Italy lost that war. And to be fair, Italy was egotistical. They only sent 30,000 fighters. Ethiopia came with 200,000. Ethiopia had guns that the British gave them. Now, why would the British give Ethiopia guns? Well, the British gave Ethiopia guns because they wanted Ethiopia to win. They planned on this global order, and they came up with a scheme to where they would say, we can let Ethiopians run this African Union thing. Let them get a victory. This is why Haile Selassie is always on Time magazine. 2 times or so, 2 or 3 times. This is why they show Haile Selassie riding with Queen Elizabeth, making him look regal and saying he never got colonized. He never got colonized because he sold out. Liberians sold out, which are Black Americans that went to Africa. You sold out, which is why you're deemed not colonized. Same thing with Ethiopia. That's why. So this was a marketing ploy, and they needed this victory. They needed Ethiopia to crush Italy, send the message back, and then Italy came in for real later on. And they say, and Italy did it symbolically because the British were already gonna. Excuse me. Italy did it symbolically because they were already losing, but they didn't want to go down in history as not ever defeating Ethiopia. So they colonized Ethiopia for 5 years. Haile Selassie ran to Britain. This is where he signed his deal with the African Union, and they let him keep his country if you do this deal. You do this marketing ploy for us because we're gonna have global order to create. So, now 1896, Eritreans were there. Eritreans were in the Italian army, right? We were in the Italian army. So some of us were sellouts. A lot of us weren't. A lot of us were setting up traps for Italians. A lot of us were giving false maps to Italians, guiding them here. We were calling, sending messages out, blah, blah, blah. We were like infiltrating because we wanted them out of there. Eritreans wanted Italy the fuck out of there. Like, get out of our country. So, and remember, we don't have a sense of ourselves yet. We're looking at Ethiopians like we're brothers. We don't even know what Ethiopians are. Everything is all gobbledygook at this point. We're in the dark. Everybody's in the dark, trying to find a sense of themselves. Italy gets whooped. They sent 20,000 people. Ethiopia had 200,000. Ethiopia had all the guns. Italy had guns, but they were outnumbered. Eritreans sabotaged and betrayed them. And that's how we won. This is why Ethiopia is not colonized. But how can you call a country not colonized when it wasn't even created yet? Because your definition, like I said, of colonization is creation. You say it's not colonized if a black person follows your rules. So after that, after the Italian loss, Menelik went back down south to Oromo. Oromo are the African tribe that split into 3. I think they're in Uganda, Kenya, and Ethiopia. Menelik went in there, colonized Oromo, put his capital. He did exactly what Europeans did, put his capital in Oromo territory, which is Addis Ababa now. Addis Ababa, who was founded by Menelik. Menelik should have put his capital where his tribe and his country is, or his people were. He didn't. He put his capital where he colonized. And he called it New Flower, Addis Ababa, right? So now that happens, and Organization of African Unity, and boom, fast forward, here we are today. So this is the general non-detailed version of the global order situation that took place, and what the true history of Eritrea and Ethiopia is, how they were created, how they were manifested, and uh, how the perspective, the pyramidian perspective that you have to take. A pyramidian is the apex of a pyramid. You have to have this top view of the world so that you can understand that that it's far more deep than we can imagine. And to get a true sense of ourselves, we have to acknowledge everything. Mind you, this is a spiritual game. It don't matter if you're white, black, Asian, whatever. Who's to say I wasn't white last time I was here and you weren't black last time you were here? As a matter of fact, I would assume as a spiritual person that it's almost guaranteed that white people were black people were white, that Asians were this and blah, 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 that it's all mixed up like that. So there's no excuse for you to say anything but that whatever you've done was based on your decisions. So it's based on you. So I can think I'm superior than a white person all I want genetically. And maybe that's true. So what? So what? Where am I at? Where are my people at? Where are my people at now? They're morons. They have nothing going on. Not to be rude, my people have nothing going on at all. They don't care nothing about nothing. So the kids are starting to learn whatever. So I'm not saying that to diss my people even, because I was ignorant before in my life, whatever. My point is that it's spiritual. And so it's just about the truth and divinity. Last but not least, 42 African tribes created what we know of as the Giza Plateau. 42 different African tribes from all over Africa came to create what we know today of as the Giza Plateau. And I think that's it. I'll wrap it up here. Peace.